everybody, my name is Holly. Thank you so much for joining me for yoga today. Our flow is going to build us up to half moon pose, which is one of my favourite poses in yoga, so I thought I'd build it into one of these short practices that I've been filming lately. So it benefits the whole body, it tests and improves our focus and balance, it improves core stability, and it strengthens our legs and ankles and feet. If you need to use a block for this pose, which if you are a beginner or if you're working on carpet, it's quite hard to balance, so it might be a bit handy to have the block, so that can just plug the gap between your hand and the mat, and I'll show you where we can use it later. If you're working with any injuries, please be mindful. If something doesn't feel right in the body, just back out of it. So we're going to start today in a comfortable seated position. I'm going to sit cross-legged. You can sit on your feet or you can take a lie down onto your backs. We can rest our hands wherever you want. You can rest them on the knees, palms up, palms down, or just bring your hands one on top of the other in the lap. Maybe rolling the shoulders up towards the ears, back and down. And you can close the eyes or just lower the gaze. And we'll just take a few moments here just to settle into our practice. Start to quiet the mind, let go of any thoughts. And just bringing our attention to our breath. So taking our inhales and exhales through the nose. Noticing as we inhale that the breath fills the chest, fills the belly. You might like to count your breath, so inhaling for a count of 4 and exhaling for a count of 4. And while we're focusing on slowing that breath down, have a quick scan through the body and check how it's feeling, noticing if there's any areas of tension. And we'll take 2 more cycles of breath. And then we'll just start to work on a neck release. So dropping our right ear down to our right shoulder. Taking an inhale here. And as we exhale, drawing a half circle with that chin. And taking our left ear over to our left shoulder. Taking an inhale here. As we exhale, draw another half circle with that chin. Right ear goes over to right shoulder. As we exhale, and taking that left ear over to that left shoulder. And just 2 more times in your own breath. Not worrying if you're hearing any clicking or creaking as your neck moves from side to side. And after your final go round, coming back through to centre. And we'll come into our tabletop pose and start to warm up the spine with some cat-cow. So bringing our wrists underneath the shoulders, knee underneath the hips. On an inhale, we're going to lift the tailbone, belly drops, chest comes forward. Exhale, round and contract, chin to chest. Taking our gaze towards the thighs. Inhale, belly drops, tailbone lifts. Exhale to round and contract. And 2 more in your own breath. And then after your final go round, coming into a neutral spine, and we'll tuck the toes, and we'll start to work on our core a little bit. So we'll lift the knees just about an inch off the mat, trying to keep that flat back, drawing that belly in towards the spine. We're going to hold here for 3 more breaths. If you need to lower the knees, that's fine, and come back up. Or just keep that core tight and stay as you are. On your next exhale, lowering the knees. And we'll come to the long edge of the mat. Staying on our knees, and we'll bring our right foot out to the right with our toes pointing towards the long edge of the mat, and keep that knee pointing to the long edge of the mat too. There is an option here to point your toes and have the knee pointing up towards the ceiling, so it's your preference. Bring your right hand onto your right leg, lift your left arm up towards the ceiling. As we exhale, we're going to take a side bend over to the right. Feeling those obliques contract on the right side of the body as we open up into the left side. Keeping that left shoulder rolling back. On an inhale, we'll come back through to center. We'll bring this left hand down onto the mat, reaching this right arm up towards the ceiling. And if you want to, we can start to work into the glutes. We can lift this right leg up in line with the hip. So tightening the glutes here to keep the leg lifted, maybe taking our gaze up to the top hand. I call this pose baby half moon. So this is an example of what we'll be doing towards the end of the session, but we'll be standing on our leg rather than kneeling. There's an option here to take a quad stretch, so we can bring this right heel in towards the glute, maybe catching a hold of the foot with the right hand and draw it in towards the sitting bones, feeling that stretch down the front of the right thigh. On our next exhale, releasing that right leg, and we'll come back through to center, bringing that right knee down onto the mat. We'll do the opposite side, so bringing our left leg out to the left, toes pointing to the long edge of the mat, or you can point them forwards, just making sure that knee is in line with whatever direction the toes are going in. Keeping that left hand on the left leg, inhale, reach that right arm up towards the ceiling. As we exhale, we're taking our side bend, so opening up into the right side of the body this time, keeping that right shoulder rolling back. Not dumping too much weight down into this left hand. As we inhale, we're bringing our chest back through to center, bringing this right hand down onto the mat, reaching the left arm up towards the ceiling, and maybe you want to bring this left leg up in line with the hip. Glutes are engaged here. Gaze is up to the top hand if it's comfortable for your neck. Option to take that quad stretch. We can bring this left heel in towards the glute, catching a hold of the foot, drawing a little bit closer in, feeling that stretch down the front of the left thigh. As we exhale, we're going to release this left leg out long and then come in back up to how we started and back into our tabletop pose. So bringing our hands slightly in front of the shoulders, feet are about hip width distance apart. On our next exhale, we're going to come into our first downward facing dog. So sending that tailbone high. Looking for length in the spine here, so definitely keep a bend in the knees if you need to. You might want to pedal out the feet, you might want to shake the hips from side to side. Pressing down through the fingertips and knuckles of the hands. You might want to take a deep bend into the knees, lifting the heels, taking our chest down onto the thighs, exhaling, taking that tailbone high. On our next inhale, we're going to take our right leg up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, we're going to bring this right knee to the outside of the right elbow, give it a little tap. Exhale, taking that leg back up towards the ceiling. As we inhale, bringing that right knee to the right elbow, exhaling, taking that leg back up towards the ceiling, three-legged dog. One more time, inhaling, taking that right knee to the right elbow, exhaling, three-legged dog. This time, as we inhale, bringing that knee in towards the chest, then stepping that right foot in between the hands, lowering the back knee down, placing the left hand to the inside of the right leg, reaching that right arm up towards the ceiling, coming into our easy twist. Making sure that right knee stays over the ankle, noticing how that back knee feels. So if you need to pad the mat, you can just roll your mat over to protect the knee. As we exhale, bringing this right hand down to the outside of the right foot, tuck in the back toes, sending yourselves back to downward facing dog. On an inhale, reaching that left leg up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, we're bringing left knee to left elbow. Give it a tap. Exhale in. Taking that foot back up towards the ceiling, three-legged dog. Inhale. Tap that left knee to the left elbow. Exhale in. Inhale in. Give it a tap. Exhale in to lift. This time as we inhale, bringing that knee in towards the nose and stepping that left foot in between the hands. Lowering the back knee down, placing the right foot to the inside of the left, right hand to the inside of the left foot. Taking that left hand up towards the ceiling into our easy twist. Gazes up to the top hand if it's comfortable. On our next exhale, releasing that left hand down and coming into our downward facing dog. On an inhale, bending into knees, gaze comes towards the top of the mat. We're stepping up to the hands and we'll come into a ragdoll fold here. So keep the feet hip width distance apart. You might want to catch on to opposite elbows, letting that crown of the head lengthen down towards the mat. You might want to sway gently from side to side. Releasing all the way down the back of the body here. And then releasing those fingertips down to the mat, pressing into the heels, bending into the knees, and we'll roll all the way up the spine, come into standing. On an inhale, circling our arms up towards the ceiling, palms meet overhead. Exhale, bringing those hands out wide, diving down over the body. Inhaling into our half lift, flat back, reaching that crown of the head away from the tailbone. Exhaling to lower, stepping back into plank pose. On an exhale, bending at the elbows, lowering all the way down to the mat. Inhaling into cobra, making sure those elbows are in towards the ribs and shoulders are down away from the ears. Exhaling to lower, making our way into downward facing dog. On an inhale, we're going to send this right leg up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, bring that knee in towards the nose. Weight comes over the wrist, stepping that right foot in between the hands. We're opening out into our warrior two. There's a deep bend into that front knee. That right knee and thigh are rolling open. Gazes over the middle finger of our right hand. On our next inhale, we're going to come into star pose, so straightening into this front leg, reaching those arms up, making the shape of the star. On an exhale, bringing our palms together down through heart center, start to bend into the knees, coming into goddess pose or temple pose. So toes are out and heels are in, pressing those thighs open, glutes are engaged and chest is lifted. On an inhale, start to straighten into the legs. Our right toes to point to the top of the mat. Turning those left toes on a 45-degree angle, reaching those arms out at shoulder height. Reaching that right arm forward. On an exhale, bringing that right hand down towards the mat, coming into triangle, reaching left arm up towards the ceiling. Option here to use a block. So you can get that lift and opening into that chest. Or you can rest your hands on the shin or bring your fingertips down to the mat, but make sure that left shoulder is rolling back. On our next exhale, we'll release this left hand down, bringing both hands to frame this right foot, stepping back into plank pose, moving through a vinyasa, exhaling to lower halfway down into chaturanga or all the way down. Inhaling into cobra or upward facing dog. In up dog, your knees and hips are lifted off the mat. It's a deeper stretch into the front of the body. Exhaling, downward facing dog. On our next inhale, sending that left foot up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, bring that knee in towards the nose. Weight comes over the wrist, stepping this left foot in between the hands, opening out into our warrior two. So back foot is parallel with the back of the mat. Deep bend into that front knee. Shoulders are directly over the hips. Have a quick check with that back hand, make sure it hasn't dropped. On our next inhale, we're going to straighten into this front leg. We're coming into our star pose, so making the shape of a star. On an exhale, bringing our palms together down through heart center, bending into the knees, coming into goddess or temple pose. Imagining pushing in those knees a bit wider. Chest is lifted. On our next inhale, we're straightening into the legs. We're turning those left toes to point to the top of the mat. Back foot is off on a 45-degree angle. We're coming into triangle, reaching that left arm forward. On an exhale, taking this left hand down towards the mat as the right arm reaches up towards the ceiling. Use that block if you need to, and keep that chest lifted. Your gaze is at the top hand if it's comfortable for your neck. Otherwise, you can take your gaze down towards the mat. On our next exhale, releasing this right hand down, framing that front foot, stepping back into plank, moving through a vinyasa, exhaling to chaturanga or all the way down. Inhaling into cobra or up dog, exhaling, downward facing dog. On an inhale, sending that right leg up towards the ceiling, exhaling, knee in towards the nose, coming into our warrior two. This time, option to build a bit more heat, we can move into our heel lift. So on an inhale, coming onto the ball of the right foot, exhaling to lower, inhaling to lift, exhaling to lower, inhaling to lift, exhaling to lower. One more time, inhaling to lift, exhaling to lower. This time as we inhale, we're coming into star pose, straightening into that front leg. As we exhale, bring our palms together down to heart center, coming into goddess pose. Option here to take a side bend. So we're bringing this right forearm onto the right thigh, reaching the left arm up and over. Keeping the chest lifted so we're not collapsing down towards the mat. Inhaling as we come back through to center, taking left forearm onto the left thigh, reaching right arm up and over into a side bend. Inhaling back through to center, straightening into the legs. We're going to come into triangle, so back foot on a 45-degree angle, right toes pointing to the top of the mat, arms out at shoulder height, reaching that right arm forward, exhaling, coming into triangle. Option here to take it into a bind, so we can bring this top arm, reach it behind the back, maybe holding onto this right thigh. So helping this chest open a little more, left shoulder rolling back, gaze is up to the ceiling or down towards the mat. From here we can start to transition into half moon. So have hold of your block if you need it, and we're just going to bring it slightly in front of that right foot. We're bringing our left hand onto the left hip, and we're going to start to take our weight into this right leg. I haven't got enough room, so I'm going to come back a little bit. Weight onto this right leg, straightening into it, bringing this left leg up at hip height, pushing through the heel of the foot. We're stacking the hips here, rolling that chest open. If you're feeling comfortable, you can bring this left arm up towards the ceiling. Loads of options here to make the pose a bit more challenging. So you can float this bottom hand off the mat if you want to. You can always take a sugarcane pose, so you can bend into this left leg, bringing the foot in towards the sitting bones, catching a hold of the foot and getting a little quad stretch. Engaging that standing leg, so drawing that kneecap up. If you do have a hold of this left foot, gently releasing it back, and then bringing this left foot down to meet the right foot. Inhaling into our half lift, exhaling to fold, stepping back into plank, moving through a vinyasa, exhaling to lower halfway down or all the way down, inhaling into cobra or up dog, exhaling to downward facing dog. So let's do that sequence on the left side. Inhaling, reaching left foot up towards the ceiling, Exhaling, bringing that knee in towards the nose, weight comes over the wrist, stepping that left foot in between the hands, opening out into our warrior two. Option to take those heel lifts, so on an inhale, coming up onto the ball of the foot, exhaling to lower, inhaling to lift, exhaling to lower, inhaling as we lift, exhaling to lower, inhaling to lift, exhaling to lower. On our next inhale, coming into our star pose, so straightening into that right leg, reaching those arms up wide, bringing the palms together, exhaling down through heart center, coming into goddess pose. Maybe taking those side bends, so bringing right forearm onto the right thigh, reaching left arm up and over, keeping that chest rolling open. Inhaling back through to center, bringing left forearm down onto left thigh, reaching right arm up and over. Inhaling back through to center, straightening into the legs, so we're turning the left toes to point to the top of the mat, right toes off on a 45-degree angle, coming into triangle, so reaching that left arm forward, exhaling, left hand comes down towards the mat as right arm reaches up towards the ceiling. Option here to take that bind, so we can bring this top arm behind the lower back, catching a hold of that left thigh, rolling that right shoulder back. And from here we'll transition into our half moon pose, so bringing that right hand onto the right hip, catching a hold of that block if you need to. Make sure you haven't got a wall in front of you, you've got enough space. We're bringing this left hand slightly in front of the left foot, taking the weight onto that standing leg as we reach the right arm up at hip height, right leg up at hip height, stacking those hips, pushing into the heel of the leg that's lifted, engaging the leg that's the standing leg, so drawing the kneecap up, rolling that right shoulder back. Maybe you want to take that right hand up towards the ceiling, maybe taking the gaze up to the top hand. Option here to take sugarcane pose, you can bring this right foot in towards the sitting bones and catching a hold of the foot and getting that little quad stretch. If you have got sugarcane pose, take a moment, inhale. As we exhale, we'll release that right leg out at hip height and then bring it down to meet the left foot. Inhale, coming into our flat back. Exhaling to fold, stepping back into plank pose, moving through our final vinyasa, so exhaling to chaturanga all the way down. Inhaling into cobra or up dog. Exhaling, downward facing dog. On an inhale, taking our right foot up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, bring that right knee behind the right wrist. As our right foot comes over to the left side of the mat, we're coming into pigeon. So scooting this back foot back, squaring off the hips here. So if you need to use a block underneath that right hip so that you feel even, go ahead and do it. Inhaling as we lift, exhaling. Maybe you want to fold on down. Maybe stacking one hand on top of the other and resting our forehead on the hands, or maybe stacking your hands on fists instead. Feeling that opening into the right hip and right glute here. On our next inhale, we'll release. So lifting the chest, bringing the palms down onto the mat, tucking these back toes, scooting the back foot in so that you can get into a downward facing dog. Maybe pedaling out the feet, noticing how the right hip feels compared to the left hip. So we'll do this on the opposite side. Inhaling, lifting the right foot up towards left foot up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, left knee comes behind the left wrist. Our foot comes over to the right side of the mat as we scoot this back foot back. Checking in with the hips here. So if you're popping up on this left hip, use the block. As we exhale, folding on down. You could even use a block underneath your forehead. I should have said that first time round. Sorry, I've only just thought of it. On our next inhale, we'll lift the chest, bringing the palms down onto the mat, tucking these back toes, maybe scooting the foot in so that we can come into a downward facing dog and pedaling out the feet. And then we'll ripple forward into our plank pose and lower all the way down onto the mat. Here we're going to bring the heels in towards the sitting bones and catch a hold at the outside of the ankles. Our forehead is on the mat. On an inhale, we're going to start to kick the feet into the hands, coming into bow pose, so lifting the chest. Maybe noticing that the knees are lifted off the mat, feeling that opening into the shoulders. And pressing those hip bones into the mat. Making sure those knees aren't splaying out, so hugging those thighs in towards each other. As we exhale, releasing, lowering down, releasing the legs, bringing the hands underneath the shoulders and pushing up into a tabletop pose. From here, we'll just wave the hips from side to side, loosening out the lower back. And then crossing at the ankles, we'll come to sitting cross-legged. We'll bring our left hand onto our right knee, reaching right fingertips behind us, coming into a twist, maybe taking our gaze over this right shoulder. Inhaling to come back through to centre. Taking our right hand onto left knee, left fingertips behind us, inhaling, lifting out the waist, exhaling to twist. Inhaling to come back through to centre. We're going to bring our legs out long, maybe scooting forward so we've got enough room behind us. Bringing our palms down onto the mat with our fingertips pointing towards us, or you can have your fingertips facing away. We're going to come into reverse plank. So on an inhale, we're going to lift the hips and point our toes down towards the mat. So lifting our hips as high as they want to go. If you're feeling quite tight in the shoulders, you might prefer to do reverse tabletops, that's bending the knees instead. You can drop the head back if it's comfortable for your neck, but I prefer to keep my gaze up towards the ceiling. Exhaling to lower down. Scooting those hips even further forward, soles of the feet on the mat, bending into the knees, reaching the arms out long as we exhale, lowering down with control. Until we bring our shoulders and heads down onto the mat. Bringing our arms out at shoulder height, or you can cactus the arms if you don't have the room. We can bring our right knee on top of the left knee, bringing them in towards the chest. As we exhale, we're going to send those knees down to the left as our gaze comes over to the right. So option here, if this cross-legged is too intense, you can just stack one knee on top of the other. Feeling broad across the chest and making sure that our right shoulder stays connected with the mat. Inhale to bring our knees back through to centre and crossing the legs. This time bringing left knee on top of right knee, bringing those knees in towards the chest. On an exhale, we're going to send those knees down to the right as our gaze comes over to the left. Keeping that left shoulder down. Breathing into the twist. Making this feel good in the spine. As we inhale, we're going to bring our knees back through to centre uncrossing the legs. If you want to, we can take a happy baby from here, so we can bring our soles of the feet up towards the ceiling, bending into the knees, catching a hold of the outside of the feet as our elbows are towards the inside of the legs, and just drawing those knees a bit closer down towards the armpits, making sure that tailbone stays connected with the mat. If it's too much to have your soles of the feet up towards the ceiling, you can just hold onto the knees and drag them down towards the armpits, or holding onto the feet and just drawing them in towards the sit bones. Just getting a nice stretch into the hips. And then releasing from here, bringing the knees in towards the chest, wrapping our arms around the shins. You might want to rock gently from side to side. An option here, if you want to take Shavasana, you can hit pause and just lie down on your mat. For everybody else, you can hold onto the backs of the thighs and roll yourself up to a seated position. So you can roll back and forth a few times till you get the momentum to come up to seating. Coming into cross-legged like we started. Dropping those shoulders down away from the ears. And resting our hands in our lap. Maybe closing the eyes or lowering the gaze. And just taking a moment here to have a quick scan through the body, checking how it's feeling. Does it feel any different to how you felt when you first got on the mat? And then give yourselves a little thanks for making the time for you to fit your yoga practice into your day today. And bringing our palms together at heart center, round forehead to fingertips. Thank you so much for joining me. It really means a lot when I see all the views. Thank you very much. And I know that my filming isn't the best because I'm in quite a tight filming space, and my sound quality wasn't the best, so this is a new microphone, so hopefully it works well, but we'll see. And if anyone wants to give feedback for poses they would like in future practices, let me know, and I will see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.